This is the last new section of this unit. We're going to be writing equations for sequences. So first off, just a sequence is just a series of numbers in a particular order. So as you see, I have one up on the board. It says 5, 8, 11, 14. So that's a sequence. And so sequences, you're going to have numbers that are either being added repetitively or subtracted repetitively. So here, obviously, we're going up, so there's a number being added repetitively. Now the question here is really this piece here. Find the 58th term. Well, I don't want to have to keep adding again and again and again and again until I hit 58 numbers. That's going to take a really long time. So what we do instead is we're going to take these numbers and we want to figure out first off, what are we adding each time? So when I move from 5 to 8 to 11 to 14, what's happening from 5 to 8? Well, I'm adding 3. From 8 to 11, I added 3. From 11 to 14, I'm adding 3. So we're continuously adding 3 every single time. So what we're going to do here is that's the number that we're going to multiply a variable by. So because if you think about this, every time you add, multiplication is just repeated addition, right? So if I say I want to add 3 so many times, 3 is going to be what I multiply by, because that means I'm adding it n number of times. Now, we want to go back and check and see if I plug in 1, because each term, this is my first term, my second term, my third term, my fourth term. The term just means where it falls in the sequence. So if I were to plug in, we'll just put equals some number over here. If I were to plug in this number over here, I want to be able to say if n is 1, then that means I should be able to get 5 out of that. Well, if I plug in a 1, 3 times 1 is 3, it's not 5, right? I need to get that to be 5. So how do I move from 3 to 5? I have to then add 2 to get to 5. So for instance, let's then try term number 2, see what happens. If I plug in a 2 for my second term, n just represents what term number we are. So 3 times 2, that gets me 6. Where do I want to be? I want to be at 8. How do I get there? I add 2. So what am I going to have to do in this piece here? I have to add 2 to every term to get me to where I actually want to be. So then the equation that we would get is this one here. Now we're starting to write this now in 2 variables. So we haven't really quite gotten there yet in terms of other things, but we're now kind of starting to add in that second variable to what's happening here. So that's our equation. Now I want to find the 58th term. So what do? I plug in 3 times 58 plus 2, and that's going to get me what that term value is. So 3 times 58 is 174, plus 2 is going to get me 176 is the 58th term. So this is our final answer that we were looking for, is that 58th term. And don't worry, we're going to do a few more examples of that. I know there's kind of a lot to take in there. We're kind of stepping it up quite a bit from what we had been doing. So take a moment or two to write that down, and then move on to the next example. let's go ahead and try another example. Example number 2. So let's say we start with 16, we go down to 11, we go down to 6, to 1, to -4, so on and so forth. And then we want to find the 17th term. So again, we want to figure out what's happening to each next term to get there. So when I go from 16 to 11, I'm subtracting 5. To go from 11 to 6, subtract 5. From 6 to 1, subtract 5. From 1 to 4, we subtract 5. So because it's repeated, that's the number we're going to multiply by. So I have -5 times n. Now, if I plug in a 1, -5 times 1 is -5. But I want it to be 16. What's the difference there to get from -5? So if I want to go all the way from -5 all the way up to 16, I have to add 21 to that to get to 16. If I look at the next one, -5 times 2, that would be a -10. Again, plus 21 will get me to that positive 11. So my equation is going to be -5 plus 21 is equal to t. This is going to help me find my term. So then I say -5 times 17 plus 21. So -5 times 17 is going to give me a -85 plus 21 will end up giving us a -64. And that's our 17th term. I'm not going to go ahead and give you 2 more that I want you guys to, again, start on your own, and then we will go from there, and I'll put the answers on the board. We're going to kind of get you into that, into practicing this a little bit on your own. We'll call this example 3 and example 4. Example 3, we'll start negative. Remember that you're asking yourself, what's being added or subtracted each time, and that's what you multiply the variable by. And then you're going to take that and you're going to do figure out how do you get from that number, if you plug in 1, how do you get from that number to what the actual number should be. So looking at this first one, if you're still working, you can pause the video, finish up, and then come back. From this first one, -3 to 4, I have to add 7. 4 to 11, we add 7. 11 to 18, we add 7. So that's going to be 7n. Now, if I plug in a 1 here, I get 7. How do I get from 7 down to -3? I subtract 10. Because remember, you're always going to plug in a 1, and if you plug in the 1, that's the first term, which means I should get this. If you'd rather check a different term, so we still have that 7n, but let's say I wanted to check and say, okay, 7 times 3. That's my third term, which should be 11. 7 times 3 is 21. Well, 21 and 11 are 10 different, so I have to subtract 10 to get to 11. So then I know that I have to subtract 10 on my equation. To get the 21st term, we take 7 times 21 minus 10. This is going to give me 147 minus 10, which gives me 137 is that 21st term. On to the next one. From 21 to 17, we're subtracting 4. 17 to 13, we're subtracting 4, so we're going to have 4n. Now, let's say we want to test the second term. -4 times 2 is a -8. How do we get from -8 to 17? I have to add 25 to that to get to 17. So we're going to add 25. So then we want the 39th. -4 times 39 plus 25. -156 plus 25 is going to end up giving us -131 as that 39th term. And so we will continue to do these examples tomorrow in class.